that he has, and you look at the sacks, you look at the defense, how good those New York Giant defenses were those 2 years they won the Super Bowl. And again, I tip of the cap to all the success that he's had and how well he played in those games. But there's a lot of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco. You could make the argument Nick Foles this past year. And I would argue Eli Manning as well, that because of the phenomenal defense that their clubs played, that was part of the reason why they won the Super Bowl. It wasn't, as you mentioned, it's not just about what the fans sometimes think about the quarterbacks and putting points up on the board.
What about Trent Dilfer in Baltimore?
That's probably the best example. I should have said that as well. But yeah, another great example. I mean, just there's so many times we've seen quarterbacks get all of the love, and it's just a phenomenal defense. And to me, that's still the way you build a team. I mean, obviously you have to have a certain level of quarterback, but I still believe that you can compete in this league if you have a phenomenal defense. We're watching it right now in Buffalo. With what Josh Allen has at times been statistically just absolutely abysmal. But he's won 2 games against the Minnesota Vikings and the Tennessee Titans, 2 pretty damn solid teams that I think are absolutely playoff kind of caliber teams. And yet it's just because Buffalo is, as you said, you play on the East Coast, it's going to get cold. And that's one of the things that the Buffalo Bills and their defensive-minded head coach, that's what they do. And so to me, that's football. I mean, all this other scoring and all that kind of stuff, obviously you have to have that to be successful. But I think you can still carve out wins in this league if you just play some smash mouth defense. And, there's a lot of clubs out there that are doing that.
Yeah, no, it's proven out. It's proven out through and through. Like you said, you need to score points. You need a quarterback. You need to be able to run the ball. But defense, it's a lost thing now from the fan standpoint because they're like, oh, who cares? It's defense. I'm worried about my fantasy points.
Yeah.
But yeah, defense it's huge. And again, if it's 11 guys and it's toughness and leadership and getting turnovers, I mean it's gigantic.
Well, it really is. And it's, to me, that's kind of like the perfect segue because we're talking about defense and how some people really love defensive-minded football and some other people really love they love the way the game is going with everybody scoring points and things of that nature. And we have a lot of listeners out there, Scotty, who love listening to you and I talk college football and the prospects and things of that nature. So, as I mentioned, it's kind of a perfect segue. I mean, we had one game this last weekend, Texas, Oklahoma, and the Red River Showdown that basically was all offense. Whoever had the ball last, it felt like was going to win. And then you had another game, another big conference matchup in the SEC between Florida and LSU that was virtually all defense. And so let's start off. Let's give those fans out there who've been listening to us kind of bag on offense all day. Let's start off with the Red River Showdown and kind of Texas, Oklahoma, and I'll talk about some players. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Colin Johnson and Hollywood Brown, 2 dynamic receivers who I think are going to be successful in the NFL. But I just kind of want to get your thought and just kind of like what we talked about before with Drew Brees. I mean, just some congratulations to Tom Herman and what he's done at Texas and kind of rebuilding that program from the inside out and having obviously a huge win against Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, gigantic win, because Oklahoma's a really good team. And they were coming in hot, undefeated, of course. And, but the thing with Texas, which was impressive, was the quarterback, not just throw the ball, but run the ball.
Yeah.
And to see how it was back and forth. And, you're well aware about my feeling about the quarterback at Oklahoma, who again, I thought played well, but it was definitely a team win. And to see Texas be able to stay in there and not give into it was very impressive. Very impressive, and it was a heck of a game. It came down to the end, of course, and just to see that was, from Herman's standpoint, I think a big time step forward, and gives them confidence to have a chance to win, the Big 12, and and it's a good division. I mean, it really is, and they got a chance to, write it out and see what happens.
Well, exactly, and it was a gigantic win for that program. I think it was just it was the poise that I was so impressed by. I mean you mentioned the quarterback. I mean Bichelle, I think was phenomenal. I mean whether he was running the ball and when he needed to be accurate as a passer, then he was. I think just the gains that he's made as a passer over the last couple of years has been really impressive, and certainly it helps when you have a big receiver like Colin Johnson. This is a kid, 6'5", 220 pounds, 230 pounds. I mean, I'm not going to say that he is going to be Mike Evans, but that's the type of guy. He goes up and he can high point passes. He can use his body to be able to beat the smaller corners. And one of the things I was most intrigued by from him, and we saw this a couple of times in this game, is that he would jump back into the defensive backs to kind of force the referees to throw the flag. And I think that a lot of times you see these receivers who are so fast but don't use that speed fully to their advantage, or are so big but they don't use their height to their advantage. I mean, what's the point of being 6'5" if you don't raise your hands and leap and have that good timing to be able to take full advantage of that height? And that was one of the things I thought that Colin Johnson for Texas did. Made some big catches for them down the stretch, or drew some big flags down the stretch as well. And so that was interesting. And then on the other side, we talked about Kyler Murray, the quarterback for Oklahoma, who, you saw some of those Russell Wilson type moves. I mean, you saw the elusiveness, you saw the straight line speed, on that long touchdown that pulled that game close, and just his poise, how much it meant to him, and the fact that he was literally crying in the post game. I mean, he takes the game seriously. He wanted to fight more, and I love that the quarterback position. Marques Hollywood Brown, his wide receiver. I mean, he looks like another T.Y. Hilton type. He's got return ability because of that speed, but just his ability as a deep threat, I think, is what really makes them explosive. And then finally, a player that I don't know is ever going to be an NFL type of guy, but gotta talk just kind of tip of the cap to that freshman kicker, Cameron Dicker, to walk out there as a true freshman. And it's not just that he made that kick. I kind of did a little bit of research on this and learned that, it's not just the true freshman kicker making that kick. The guy holding the ball was the deep snapper as well as the placeholder, all three true freshmen. And so the poise of all three of those freshmen to get that clean snap, to get that clean hold, and then to get that clean kick to win that game, I just really thought was, one, a testament to those freshmen and just their poise. But again, kind of Tom Herman and the fact that this is a team that's on the rise, and they're doing it seems like, the right way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was watching the game, of course, and seeing the kicker, Dicker the kicker, I guess they call him, smiling on the sideline on third down.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this guy's either crazy or he's very confident.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden they announced that the snapper is a freshman, the holder's a freshman, true freshman, and the kicker's a true. Bang, bang, bang. They hit it, all three perfect. And that's a big game now. I don't know if you've ever been to it, but I've been there. That's a huge, huge game. And to walk out there, in front of 75, 80,000 people, whatever it is, and be able to do that, I promise you he's not buying a dinner this week.
In the state of Texas, he may never buy a dinner again.
That was huge, because Oklahoma's had it, and had it for a while. And they were favored to win, of course. But, Texas is doing a nice job, really nice job. The same thing, with LSU. I know they got beat. But I think with Coach Orgeron and what he's got instilled with that team, that they're going to be in every game. Now, the SEC is a different level, as everybody's well aware. But they're a good football team.
They are.
They're not going to win everything. It's not possible. But he has them believing, and, of course, the defense always has got a lot of players. A lot of players.
It certainly does. And that's one of the things I just love watching SEC football, because they still play the kind of brand of football that I personally enjoy watching the most. And, it's funny. We just mentioned all these players, Colin Johnson, Hollywood Brown, the quarterbacks and I mean, all these guys are all offense, and then all the players I want to talk about LSU and Florida are all defense. And so it's just kind of funny how certain programs, certain regions of the country, how they produce certain types of players, and you just kind of get used to that. And so Florida. Yeah. I was kind of focusing on LSU at first, and I love the corner, Greedy White. I love the young safety that they have there. He's only a sophomore, but still I like him. And then Devin White, the linebacker. I mean, my kind of players. And then being Florida, whose defense made a lot of the biggest plays in this game. I mean, they got an edge rusher, this Chukai Polite. That, my goodness, I mean, his burst off the edge and his ability to kind of wrap around the corner and close on the football. Scott, I don't know if you focused on Polite much, but, I mean, this is a guy, we're seeing in the NFL, you don't, kind of like we talked about before with Drew Brees, you don't have to have that great height necessarily. If you can make big plays, then you can be successful. Khalil Mack isn't 6'5", Von Miller isn't 6'5", I mean, the kid in Pittsburgh, TJ Watt, he's not 6'5". I mean, these guys are 6'2", 6'3", but they can get upfield, they can dip and rip, and they can close. And he has that kind of ability as well. So I just, I was just really impressed by Orgeron and what he has done at LSU, but as well as what Dan Mullen has continued at Florida. I definitely want to give some credit to some of the guys that did some recruiting at Florida previous to Mullen, but the NFL pipeline from Gainesville and from Baton Rouge is going strong.
No, it is. And the thing about it, you nailed it. There's different regions of the country. There's different conferences in the country, of course. When you watch SEC, you see the closest thing to the NFL. Not knocking the Big 12, not knocking the Big 10, Pac-12, whatever you want to. I don't even know what they're called anymore. There's so many of them. But,
yeah.
But you know what? It's cool from my standpoint, being a personnel guy, to see good defense, to see good pass rush, see good run stoppers, see coverage guys, and see tough guys in the back end with the safeties. And that's what you see in the SEC.
Yeah.
And that's why every week's a dogfight. Every week's a dogfight. I mean, you can play Kentucky. And everybody's like, it's Kentucky. It's a basketball school. No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
They're playing football. They're playing legit football. And they have talent.
No, they certainly do. I mean, you mentioned Kentucky, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him. I mean, you got, of course, the edge rusher in Allen. You got the running back in Snell. I mean, you have two players who are legit. There's not maybe Alabama, but everybody else, these two players would start. I mean, they're good players. This is not the Kentucky of old, where you might have one splashy quarterback or something that fits in with the coach's philosophy. I mean, these are guys who have bought into the program, and with Allen, the edge rusher, I mean, he could have come out as a junior. I mean, he had the numbers, but he wasn't a fully developed all-around player. But we saw against A&M. I mean, he was dropping into coverage and doing a damn good job of it. He's not just an edge rusher. And then with Benny Snell, didn't have the most productive day against Texas A&M, and that's a credit to Texas A&M. But, he's a hard-nosed running back, the kind of running backs I like, that they kind of get drafted late and, can surprise some people because maybe they don't have the great stopwatch speed, but they play hard and they play fast because they're instinctive quality players.
Yeah, no. Snell will play in the league. He's one of those guys that, like you said, he's not going to be the fastest and jump the highest or do the best short shuttle or long shuttle or whatever. He's a football player. You know what? He's got size, he's got strength, and he's tough. And those guys play in the NFL.
Well, they certainly do. Which kind of gives me, I didn't mention this before, but it's one of the things I've been watching. We've talked so much about, what a phenomenal defensive line or edge rusher class this looks like it's going to be. But the running back, on the other hand, it feels to me like the cupboard's a little bare. The last 2 years we've seen phenomenal running back talent. And there's some upperclassmen, or excuse me, some underclassmen that, that I haven't yet had a chance to really watch well. But of the top guys, I mean, I like Damian Harris at Alabama, but I don't love him. I don't think that he's a special guy. He's going to go top 15 or anything. I don't know if there is a running back in this class that is potentially a first round kind of caliber guy, at least not yet. And so that's one of the things. I mean, those people who are waiting for yet another fantasy football driven kind of a first round,